What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing with us their mum stories. My guest today is Claire Doré, who helps soul-aligned entrepreneurs to awaken to the truth of who they are so they can step fully into their power and live the orgasmic, truly turned on life they desire. But she's also a mum who has been brave enough to make tough decisions and put herself first. Thanks, Claire, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Maria. It's such a privilege and pleasure to be here and chat about all things mum and business. So appreciate being on.
Oh, you're most welcome. So, who is Claire Doré?
What a big question that is. What a big question. So who am I? So I put myself as a leader. I feel I have a very big soul mission here in this lifetime, to really awaken others, to give them permission to fully express themselves. And one of the things that I really teach in my work, so I'm a coach, I call myself an embodiment coach, because here's the thing, if we don't embody any of the work we do, nothing shifts, right? So one of the things I always say is like, I coach entrepreneurs to really, am I allowed to swear? No.
No.
No, that's fine. That's the question I meant to ask you before. Okay, so I teach them to rip apart logic and to really like embody an unshakable trust, because essentially, like, we all know what's best for us and we just have to trust that. It often never makes sense. So that's part of who I am. You know, my work is such a huge part of who I am, and it comes through in everything that I do. I also am a mum, which is probably the most gigantic and rewarding and emotional and roller coaster of a role that I have. So I had 3 children under the age of 4. They are now teenagers, so I have 3 teenagers, and I'm newly divorced, so I am navigating a whole new landscape. And yeah, so that is me.
So the first question for you is then, did you always know that you wanted to be a mum?
Yeah, 100%. Like, that was always in me. So I grew up in a family with 3 other siblings and a ton of stepbrothers and sisters. And my youngest brother came along 15 years after me. And I mean, people thought he was mine. Like, he had blonde hair, blue eyes, looked like me. And I would like just like take care of him and like yeah, like it was just felt so natural. And I think that's always been in me, like having a draw to children and really wanted to live out that fairy tale, actually, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Crikey. So you had your first taste of being a mum-like figure really, really young then. So when your children came along, I suppose it, like you said, it would have been just natural because you've had that initial practice without the stress and pressure and responsibility of it.
Yeah, didn't quite go that way, but I think when you're a teenager, like you know, you don't worry about stuff, you know, and as much as he was my brother and there's an emotional connection there, I don't think anything is like the emotional connection you have when you've had a baby inside you growing, and suddenly, like, you know, they feel like part of you for a very long time. um and yeah, I can't say that I slid into it, you know, like I enjoyed it, but it was a challenge. Yeah, it was a challenge. It was a major change, and it changed me.
So tell me more about your mum's story, because like you said a minute ago, you had 3 children under 4. That is a lot to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, I moved quite fast in life, and that's a very, very good example of that. And it's not actually, let me reframe that. I used to move fast in life. That was a pattern of mine. And yeah, so my 2 boys are 18 months apart, and my eldest wasn't actually even walking when my second one was born. So essentially, I had 2 babies. Um, and yeah, it's nothing. It was like the most amazing weight loss you could ever ask for. Like I literally never had a chance to sit down. Like it was probably when I was at my skinniest, really, because it was busy and boys have a lot of energy. So I literally had to be in the park pretty much all day. We were living in London then, so the parks in London were just so well equipped, and I would literally just, you know, take a ton of food and we would just go and sit in the park, you know, gather friends, and it was really sociable. It was a really sociable time. It really was. But I'll be honest, I definitely lost a part of my own identity in that whole mix. Um, yeah, there's a massive learnings, and I'm still learning. Like, it doesn't stop, right?
No, no, every day is a school day. And I think I did a post about this a month or so ago, where even when you think, oh yeah, I think I've got it. I know what I'm doing. I've got that rhythm, then something will happen where the universe goes to, ha ha, no, you haven't. It's all changed. Because we're always changing. The world is always changing. Nothing is constant. So even when you think you've got there, you'll realize that no, every day is different and we just deal with it with a smile and get on with things.
Mm, mm. We're shifting identity every single day, and evolve, you know, we all evolve at a different speed. And I think, you know, like, yeah, so much changes, so of course our children are evolving as well alongside us and step into new phases, and you know, throw curveballs along, you know, like, catch this one, mum, you know, it's like, ah, help.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you've been through that transition already of having your children as babies, going through their childhood and transitioning through to teenagers. How has mothering changed as your children have grown, and how you've grown as well?
Mm. I think the biggest thing that I have learned is to talk less, listen more. And as my children have, like, stepped into teenagehood, what I started to notice was all I needed to be was just be there, you know, just almost like hold space for them. Um, and I think I think this was definitely from conditioning, where there was this sort of feeling that, oh, I need to try and fix this. So if someone's not happy, I need to try and fix it. And actually, like, empowering them to find the resources within themselves and the answers. Much like coaching, it's like we all know what our next step is. Like, no one else knows what that is. And I suppose, yeah, I think definitely I put my hand up, and as a young mum, it was like, oh my God, yeah, like, got to fix everything, got to make it all okay. And there was definitely some perfectionist traits going on, and lots of stuff that I've had to grow through. And I'd say, the mum I am now is a completely different mum to like 10 years ago. I'm much
And
more,
in what way?
well, I'm more conscious. I'm more conscious. Like, I've evolved dramatically, since being an entrepreneur, to be honest. Like, my personal development journey kind of started exactly when I stepped into business, which is 14 years ago. And then, so, gradually that investment in myself has like got higher and higher. So my growth has um kind of expanded more and more. So yeah, I think also one thing I really recognize is I took it really seriously. And now, and it was almost like my kids didn't see fully who I was. I mean, there's other stuff like caught up in that as well, to do with my marriage, but now they see all of me. Like, they see all of me. They get the full me. And yeah, it's hard to put into words, but it's like an energy, a different energy that I bring as a mum.
And do you think it is because of the personal work that you've done in yourself, or do you think that's part of the natural journey where, we're growing, they're growing up, and therefore naturally the relationship is going to change as they go into sort of more adulthood?
For me personally, I'd say it's the growth that I've had. I've had dramatic growth in the last 2 years, like dramatic. It's like I had a spiritual awakening, and pretty much burnt myself to the ashes, like a phoenix, and then have risen. And so yeah, I put it down to a lot of that, and obviously they get the ripple effect of that, and the way I'm leading my life now, I'm showing them and modeling to them a completely different way, like really ripping up all of the societal rules, all of the generational kind of stories and structure that is like running through us.
Can you give me, because that's intriguing, so give me an example. What's happened and how have they responded?
What's happened? Well, I suppose the first big thing was leaving my husband after 21 years. And that caused that was off, the spiritual awakening was happening, and it was like my soul was saying, like, this is non-negotiable now. You have to go. You have to step into this decision. And like before that, like I knew I wanted to leave, but I was scared, and the fear was massive. And so I think fully stepping into my truth was just such a big shift in my energy. So one, they might not be conscious to this, but I've modeled that to them. Like if you're not happy, you make a move that to put you as number one and your happiness first. So that, and I suppose the other thing is I've been on this massive journey since, traveling. I've traveled to, gosh, I can't count how many countries last year. I've chosen not to buy a house. I also homeschool. So there's a lot of things that I do that goes totally against what society portrays as what we're supposed to do, you know. Put that in inverted commas, because, you know, there's no supposed to, there's no shoulds.
And to take me back to making that brave decision of separating from your husband, because you said you knew that you needed to leave, but there was a fear there. When did you feel the, I'm going to say, the voice saying to you need to leave? And then how did you find the courage to make that decision, knowing that it's not a decision that's just going to impact you from that point, but it's obviously going to impact your children as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the biggest fears, that they would reject me. That was my biggest fear, that I would lose my children. Yeah. And so there were a few kind of things that I'd say were building up to this. And, you know, I recognized that I'd been unhappy for quite some time. And, you know, I remember when we sat down and told our children, my first words were, "This is the hardest decision I have ever had to make in my whole life." And I remember my eldest son just like looking at me in, you know, straight directly in the eyes, and just went, "Mum, I can imagine that." And so, like, because he's the eldest, like the other two were just on board with that, and he's got incredible empathy. So immediately I was like, okay, it's all okay. Like, everything's going to be all right. And it always is all right. Whatever happens, like, it's perfect. It's growth. It's awareness. But yeah, I had read a book called Untamed.
That's an amazing book, by the way. If
Incredible.
Anybody who's watching or listening this hasn't read it, read it. It's a brilliant book.
That book changed my life. That book changed my life. So I read that a year before I left my ex. I read it 4 times, like it landed with me. And there was one line in there. There were 2 things that really stuck out from that book. So one line was, disappoint everyone else around you before you disappoint yourself. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to put my happiness number 1 now. And then the other piece in there was all around, what are you modeling to your kids? And then I was just like, and particularly my daughter, I've got one daughter, so I was like, oh, that was nearly a swear word. So I was like, oh my, like, I don't want this for her. I don't want this for her. Like, my husband's an incredible man. Like, I just want to say that, like, he really is an incredible man. And I have so much gratitude for him, because the way we co-parent is stunning, absolutely stunning. And, you know, it was a shock for him when I told him I was leaving. It didn't go well. That did not go well. So I have a lot of love for him. He will always be in my heart, but we were just out of alignment. And I could see that, like, he had dreams that were just like totally different to mine, like wildly different. And it was, so there were lots of signs building up to this. And then when it actually happened, like when I told him, I mean, that was not, I don't think you ever plan the conversation. It fell out of my mouth, and I just then couldn't put it back in. And it was like, I think my soul just literally delivered those words, because it was like, you've got to do this now. You've got to do this for you. You've got to do this for your daughter. You've got to do this for your sons, for him, for every woman that follows you.
My goodness, that I think that's a lot of pressure though as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I think I don't know, pressure. I think I felt so liberated, literally, from like that moment. so liberated that I'd finally I'd finally unleashed myself, you know, and set myself free. And yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, I'm not going to lie. And there are times when I even, you know, will question, like, what happened, you know? And there's a ton of grief, even though I left him, like, the grief doesn't stop. And that's probably been the biggest thing that has, that I've had to grow through and heal. Because, you know, I thought when I walked down that aisle, I was in for the fairy tale.
Mm.
I was in for, you know, forever. My vows were like, you know, till death do us part. Like I said, those, I believe that. And I think one of my biggest learnings is nothing is forever. Because we're always shifting and changing. So, yeah.
So how did you transition then from being, you know, a traditional family, mum, dad, the kids, to then being a single parent and being able, and I'm going to say the juggle becoming a bit more complicated?
Yeah. And do you know what? I really feel like we've navigated that well together. Like, I have to say, I'll take my hat off to him because this wasn't his choice. But we've really come together as a team. And I'd say the way we co-parent is better than when we were married. Like, it's really, it's great. It's really great. And the kids just have adapted incredibly well. It's deepened my relationship with them for sure. I'm way more open with them, and we talk about, there's no topic off limits, like there's no topic is taboo. And so we get into some really deep conversations, and yeah, it's been really great. But yeah, there are times when a child might want me at the same time as another child in two different locations, and I'm like, okay, someone's going to have to be resourceful in this moment. And so I feel it's empowered them massively. Like, they've grown, like, emotionally, as a result of this. And I think one of the things I see, I have a lot of women who come to me and go, like, I'm not happy, but I don't know how you did that. And I'm really scared about the children, how they react. But what I have observed is the children are so resilient, and they actually grow from the experience. It's powerful for them.
So if you could rewind time
Mm.
and give yourself some advice, say 5 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
5 years ago. Um, Great question. I think, do you know, I feel life is short, and you've got to live it full out. You've got to live it full out in line with your truth, and do all the things, like, do all of them. And if you get an intuitive hit about it, like, just take that action. Like, take that action. It's going to feel scary because when we are leading our lives and our business by our intuition, like, it is stepping into the fire. It's stepping into the unknown. We never see the full staircase. We just see that first step. And so I think I've, like, in the last few years, I've really got to trust myself, having taken that decision. And so, yeah, I'd like to give myself that advice 5 years ago, like, trust yourself more. Like, and it is a practice, it's like a muscle, you know. It's like, you know, you do the little things and you see a result, and then you have to keep doing those, like, daily.
Mm. So taking what you've said as advice that you would give yourself, there will be women who are listening and watching this and going, I think that's great advice. I want to take that advice. But they might at the same time be thinking, oh, that's a bit overwhelming. You know, I'm going from everything's stable. There are things I want to do, but it's just safer to hold back. What one piece of advice would you give them so that they can step into their power and take that first step up that staircase?
A question I often ask women is, well, something I see is how women really struggle to put themselves first. And there's a couple of questions I quite like to ask is like, you know, is that what you want to model to your daughters, to your children? And, you know, what is the benefit on everyone else if you're happy? Because if we're not happy, like it's felt through everything. Like we are energy, and, you know, 80% of communication is nonverbal. So it's all about that feeling state. And if you're not feeling fully you and fully, you know, happy, that impacts every single thing you do. And that has a dramatic impact on our children.
Wow, that's so powerful. It is, I think, with anything in life, rather than looking outward and seeing what we think is the reality, the start point should be to look inward and go, right, okay, then what do I want? What are my needs? Because once you know who you are and where you're going, you become more confident in yourself, and then others will feel the benefit of that, and life will feel a lot easier. It might not be simple or easy, but it will feel easier. Oh, amazing. And I think that's a lovely place to end this lovely conversation. But before we go, there will be women listening to this conversation saying, Claire sounds like an amazing lady. Yes, she is. And they'll want to connect with you. So make it easy for our listeners. How can people connect with you?
So I use 2 platforms on social media, Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, you can follow me, Claire Doré, which is D-O-R-E, acute. And I have a Facebook group as well called Wild Souls in Business. So people are welcome to join there. And that is for men and women in business. And on Instagram, I am the Wild Woman CEO.
Amazing. Well, I'd like to say thank you, Claire, for speaking to me today and being so open and honest. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode. And if you did, then of course, please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.